welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and like. That night, Marcus Kane sat hunched in his rundown apartment on the 87th floor of Aether Nexus, a colossal megacity suspended in Earth's sky in 2147, a hulking mass of metal defying gravity with arrogant permanence. Light from the buildings outside poured through the scratched, murky windowpane, bathing the tiny room in a bizarre mix of colors, pale green clashing with deep purple, streaked with flickering pulses like the veins of a city that never slept. He'd just returned from a grueling 10-hour shift at the drone repair shop, where rusted old machines screeched with every metallic groan, and the overseer, a sweaty, oil-stained brute, barked orders as if shouting was the only way to keep the assembly line moving. His hands still bore traces of black grease, clinging to the crevices of his fingers despite a half-hearted wipe with a tattered rag. Now, Marcus just wanted to forget it all. He sank into his battered armchair, its exposed springs creaking faintly beneath him like a tired complaint. Before him sat a cheap frozen meal packet, what he jokingly called Survivor's Dinner, a gray, mushy concoction that was probably 80% synthetic chemicals rather than anything remotely natural. He tore open the foil, the sharp chemical stench hitting him hard, but he didn't care. With a lazy flick, he activated the hollow TV floating midair, its light flickering weakly before stabilizing. Cosmo Brawlers blared to life, a dumb reality show he was hooked on just to kill time. Alien fighters, tentacle brutes, and shimmering scaled freaks threw themselves at each other in zero-gravity arenas, roaring and slugging it out as if violence was their only proof of existence. The growls from the screen echoed through the cramped room, drowning out the whine of the ancient ventilation system rattling above. But just as he shoveled a spoonful of the bitter mush into his mouth, trying not to dwell on its chemical aftertaste, a sharp sound sliced through the noise. Beep! His wrist communicator, an old, cracked relic with a splintered screen, lit up, its red light flashing insistently like a warning flare. Marcus frowned, dropping the spoon onto the table with a dry clack, muttering under his breath, "Another damn robolim ad? How desperate do those bastards think I am?" He was used to the spam. "Upgrade your life with the latest robotic arm," or "Titanium legs, stride like a warrior." But this time, when he swiped his hand through the air to summon the hologram interface, the message that materialized stopped him cold. The spoon slipped from his grip, clattering softly to the floor with a faint clang. "Marcus, come to me immediately. Urgent. No delays. Sender Kalia Vex." He blinked, staring at the terse glowing text hovering before him, as if it were a riddle with no answer. Kalia Vex wasn't the type to send messages, let alone cryptic ones. She was a Zorynian, an alien species he'd only known through sporadic encounters over the past 3 years, with pointed ears sharp as blades, silver shimmering skin that glinted under lights, and deep purple eyes that could cut through any lie like a laser. In Marcus's memory, Kalia was a force of brutal honesty. She'd once eyed the ragged clothes he wore at their first meeting and said, "You look like you crawled out of a junk heap." Or that time he'd fiddled with a plasma pistol in her armory, nearly setting the room ablaze. She'd stormed over, yanked it from his hands, and snapped, "Touch my gear again, and I'll singe your hair off before you can apologize." But it was that unrelenting candor that made him trust her, even if it scared the hell out of him sometimes. So this message, short to the point of curtness, devoid of her usual biting sarcasm or casual greetings, sent a chill racing down his spine. Marcus rubbed his temples with grease-stained fingers, trying to force his brain to catch up. "What's so urgent?" he muttered, his voice a low rumble in the quiet room, underscored only by the faint buzz of the TV. He glanced at the text again, as if staring hard enough would coax out more details. Nothing. It just hung there, silent and enigmatic, a wordless challenge. "She's never invited me to her place before," he mumbled, suspicion creeping into his tone. For 3 years, Kalia had kept her distance, not cold, exactly, but a boundary he'd never dared cross. So why now? Why the exception? He stood, the armchair groaning in protest as his weight lifted. Marcus peered through the grimy window, where small airships darted back and forth in the smog-choked night. Their engines cast faint flickers of light, blending with the gray haze cloaking the lower levels of Aether Nexus. Out there, the city thrummed with life, but to him, it was just familiar chaos, a place he'd known his whole life, every alley and corner etched into his bones. Yet now, that familiar world felt alien, all because of a handful of words. He took a deep breath, the metallic tang of smoke and dust filling his lungs. Bending down, he grabbed his old jacket, a patched-up relic, once deep green but now faded to a dull gray, and slung it over his shoulders with a slow, deliberate motion, as if bracing himself for something bigger than he could grasp. His hand brushed the personal hoverboard in the corner, a junk heap contraption he'd built from scraps, its engine whining every time it started, but it worked. He pressed the ignition, and it sputtered to life with a shrill hum, a puff of smoke curling from the exhaust. "Here we go," he muttered, a hint of defiance in his voice, though a growing unease churned in his gut like a brewing storm. Stepping onto the tiny balcony, the high-altitude wind cut through his thin jacket, making him shiver. The hoverboard vibrated under his feet, its engine growling softly as he adjusted its course. Ahead, the upper district of Aether Nexus loomed into view, a dazzling expanse of light in the distance, where buildings twisted like living things and glowed like polished gems. That was Kalia Vex domain, a world apart from his own. Marcus gritted his teeth, sucked in another breath, and hit the throttle. The hoverboard shot forward into the night, carrying him and a silent question toward whatever awaited. Marcus's hoverboard shuddered violently as he slowed it down, its engine screeching a dry protest before cutting out entirely. He landed on a sleek alloy-paved street, the surface gleaming underfoot and reflecting his worn-out boots like a mocking reminder that he didn't belong here. The upper district of Aether Nexus was a different beast altogether, alien enough to feel like a dream or maybe a nightmare dressed up in glitz. These streets weren't coated in cold dust or machine oil like the slums he called home. They shimmered like molten silver, pulsing with a faint, almost alive light with every step he took. The buildings around him curved gracefully, devoid of harsh angles, as if molded from something organic, a fusion of metal and flesh, stretching skyward like giant trees swaying in an unseen breeze. The air carried a crisp ozone scent, so clean it nearly made him sneeze, a stark contrast to the choking fumes and damp rot that clung to his clothes down below. He paused before a towering structure that stood out even among the others. Its outer walls were coated in a strange biomaterial, shimmering like fish scales under the glow of floating lanterns overhead. As the light shifted, the surface seemed to ripple in response, as if it were breathing, watching him with 1,000 invisible eyes. Marcus stood there, hands shoved in his jacket pockets, head tilted as he sized up the front door, a seamless slab of metal, smooth as a mirror with no handle or crack, reflecting his tired face, shadowed eyes, and messy hair. He cleared his throat and tapped the surface lightly, the knock-knock, echoing small but sharp, like he just roused something awake. A second later, a faint hiss sounded like compressed air escaping, and the door slid aside, revealing Kalia Vex standing there, still as a statue. Her pointed ears twitched faintly, each movement precise like an antenna tuning into a signal, while her deep purple eyes sharp as crystal blades locked onto him without a flicker. Her silver skin glinted under the dim interior light, casting dancing flecks with every slight tilt of her head. 12 minutes late, she said, her voice cold as ice, each word delivered with lethal precision, devoid of excess emotion. Marcus shrugged, forcing a casual air despite the quickened thud of his heart under her gaze. "You know my hoverboard's not exactly hyperspeed," he quipped, letting his usual humor slip in to cut the tension. "Plus, air traffic was a mess tonight. Those cargo haulers kept clogging the lanes like they owned the damn sky." Kalia didn't smile, didn't even twitch her lips. She crossed her arms, her pointed ears tilting slightly as if catching something beyond his hearing. "Get in," she said, her tone flat but carrying an undeniable weight, a command disguised as an invitation. Marcus hesitated for a beat, glancing over his shoulder at the gleaming street behind, then stepped over the threshold, his dirty boots leaving faint smudges on the pristine floor. The moment his foot landed inside, an eerie sensation washed over him, like he'd stepped into a living creature rather than a home. The interior looked normal enough: a plush gray sofa in the corner, a transparent glass table hovering inches off the ground, flawless white walls, but everything pulsed with an unnatural vitality. The walls quivered faintly with each step he took, ripples spreading across their surface like water disturbed by a stone, then fading before he could focus on them. Light didn't come from fixed fixtures but floated freely, tiny motes like fireflies drifting lazily through the air, casting a warm golden glow. A low hum vibrated through his bones, not the drone of machinery, but the steady breathing of something vast and asleep. The hairs on his arms stood on end, not from cold but from the uncanny feeling that the room itself was sizing him up, judging him. "You're richer than I thought," he said, tossing out a half-joking remark to shake off the unease creeping up his spine. He turned slowly, scanning the space, searching for something familiar amid the alien tech. "Or is this some freaky super gizmo I've never heard of? I fix drones, not, what do you call this, a living house?" Kalia's lips curved faintly, but the smile didn't reach her eyes, just a cold arc on her silver face. "Zorynian biotech," she replied, her voice flat like she was reciting a manual. "Our homes adapt to their occupants. It's aware in a way." Marcus nodded, pretending to understand even as his mind spun with questions. He pictured the walls sprouting legs and chasing him with eerie bio-whines, nearly laughing at the absurdity. "Neat," he said, his voice cracking slightly as he took another step, feeling the floor pulse faintly beneath him. "But if it starts talking to me, I'm screaming. No kidding, I'm not great with chatty furniture." Kalia didn't reply, her gaze sliding over him with an unreadable intensity before settling on the dining table. She pointed a short, authoritative gesture. The table was already set with strange dishes, small, gem-like food blocks glimmering like jade, their surfaces slick with a thin, misty sheen, exuding a sweet, unfamiliar scent unlike anything he'd ever smelled. "Sit. Eat," she said, her tone unchanging, though her eyes flickered with something: anticipation, maybe calculation. Marcus approached, pulling out a chair with a faint screech, as metal scraped the floor. He eyed a piece of food wrapped in a translucent film, hesitating as he picked it up. "What's this?" he asked, suspicion lacing his voice. "Something to grow me an extra arm or make me fly? 'Cause I need a heads up for that." Kalia tilted her head, her purple eyes flashing like a spark. "Just food," she said, but the way she watched him made him sure she was holding something back. He took a bite, and instantly, his body jolted. His eyes widened, ears ringing like they'd been stuffed with cotton, and he felt every breath of air in the room, not just drafts, but whispers weaving tales he couldn't grasp. His mouth went dry, his voice pitching higher, stumbling over itself. What did you put in this?" Kalia tilted her head further, her pointed ears twitching as if savoring his reaction. "A mild stimulant," she said, calm as if it were obvious. "To keep you sharp for what I'm about to say." Marcus swallowed hard, his heart pounding loud enough to drown out the room's low hum. "Say what?" he rasped, gripping the table's edge like an anchor as a tidal wave of sensation crashed over him. Kalia sat motionless, her chin resting on her hand, those deep purple eyes pinning Marcus like twin daggers piercing through his flimsy defenses. The air between them thickened, the room's low hum sinking with an unspoken tension, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath for his response. "Are you ready to leave Earth?" she asked, her voice steady but razor-sharp, each word dropping like a stone into still water. "Forever." Silence crashed down, so heavy Marcus could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his chest. He let out a shaky laugh, short and off-key, trying to wield it like a shield against the panic surging inside him. "Funny, Kalia," he said, his voice trembling but clinging to his usual humor. "Real in-character stuff, drop a bombshell like that and watch me freak out, right?" But Kalia didn't crack a smile, didn't even flinch. She tilted her head slightly, her pointed ears twitching, and for the first time since he'd known her, he caught a glint of deadly seriousness in her gaze, not her usual cold sarcasm, but a chilling certainty, like she'd just sentenced something to death. "I'm not joking," she replied, her tone sinking lower, each syllable slicing deeper into his fragile calm. Marcus set the food down, his hand trembling so much he pressed his fingers against the glass table to hide it. The lingering warmth of the strange dish still clung to his tongue, but now it only made him feel colder. "You mean?" he started, his voice faltering as he wrestled with the chaos in his head. "Quit fixing drones, that job I hate but keeps me alive? Ditch my shitty apartment, where I've gotten used to the ventilation's whine and the stink of machine oil? Leave the whole damn life I've scraped by with for 29 years, even if it's nothing to brag about?" He looked up at her, searching for a hint that this was a prank, but Kalia's silver face remained impassive, unyielding. "Yes." She nodded, the motion small but final, a verdict with no appeal. "Because this place isn't safe for you anymore." Her words hit like a boulder, sending an icy shiver from his neck down his spine. Marcus furrowed his brow, suspicion etching a deep line across his forehead. "You're freaking me out," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, as if speaking louder might make her next revelation real. "Explain." "Now." But before Kalia could answer, a sudden surge of adrenaline jolted through him, pushing him to act without thinking. He shot up, the chair screeching as it skidded back, and lunged for the metal door he'd entered through. He didn't know what he'd do: run back to his old apartment, scream to vent the pressure, or just escape this suffocating weirdness, but he had to move. His hand stretched out, inches from the door, when the room betrayed him. The walls rippled like stirred water, waves of liquid metal spreading from where he'd nearly touched, and in a blink, the surface melted away, swallowing the exit as if it had never existed. Marcus spun around, chest heaving, eyes wide enough to sting. "Are you kidding me?" he shouted, his voice cracking with shock and adrenaline. "Your house just ate the door." Kalia sighed, a faint sound laced with exhaustion, her pointed ears twitching as if she were holding back irritation at his outburst. "I activated the security field," she said, her tone calm but edged with reproach. "To stop you from doing something stupid." Marcus's jaw dropped, his hands planting on his hips as he struggled to catch his breath. "Stupid?" he shot back, sarcasm dripping through his anger and confusion. "Like jumping out the window? 'Cause I'm seriously tempted now." Kalia stared at him, unblinking, her purple gaze cutting through his last shred of defiance. "Exactly," she said, her voice cold enough to make him shiver. He stumbled back a few steps, hands still on his hips, sucking in deep breaths to steady himself, though his mind spun like a broken engine. Fine, he said, his voice lower but still quaking. "You win. I'll sit. But you'd better explain everything. Right now. No more games." He yanked the chair back, plopping down with a sharp clack, his eyes locked on her. Kalia didn't speak immediately. She reached for a slim metal flask on the table, pouring a dark green liquid that shimmered like liquid jade under the room's floating lights. She slid the cup toward him, her movements slow but deliberate. "Drink," she said. "It's just tea." Marcus grabbed it, sniffing a faint sweet scent wafted up, not harsh like the earlier dish. He took a sip, the warmth spreading down his throat, soothing without the hallucinatory kick. "All right," he said, setting the cup down but keeping his grip tight like a lifeline. "Spill it. What's going on?" Kalia interlaced her fingers, her long silver digits locking together, her gaze so intense it felt like she was peeling back his every thought. "My people, or rather, a faction of them, want you," she said, her voice even but carrying a terrifying weight. Marcus blinked, his mind reeling like he'd been tossed into a vortex. "Want me?" he echoed, disbelief mingling with a flicker of panic. "What for? Stick me in an alien museum? Sell me to some cosmic slave traders?" Kalia didn't answer right away. She raised a hand, her fingers brushing the air, and a hologram flared to life between them. Pale blue light projected a document filled with swirling Zorynian script, intricate lines like an ancient code. At the top, Marcus's face stared back, a crisp photo from an angle he didn't recall, his shadowed eyes and tangled hair glaring at him like an accusation. "This is a Galactic Council file," Kalia said, her voice low and certain. "They're a faction within our government. They believe certain humans carry unique genes, valuable to them. Marcus frowned, his brow creasing deep. Unique genes? He asked, skepticism lacing his tone but not masking his unease. You mean I'm some kind of superhero? 'Cause if so, I'd like a heads up so I can practice flying. Kalia shook her head slightly, her ears twitching. Not quite, she replied. But you're the first they've confirmed. He clenched his jaw, his hand tightening around the cup until it creaked faintly. Confirmed for what? He growled, his patience fraying to threads. I'm not sure, Kalia admitted, a rare hint of hesitation crossing her silver face. Maybe research, maybe exploitation. But I know this, they're coming here soon. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face, his head spinning like he'd been hurled into a storm. He shot up again, this time bolting for the window. Damn if it opened or not, he just needed out of this freaky cage. But the walls morphed again, hardening into a transparent barrier as tough as steel. He slammed his fist against it, the thud ringing out, his breath ragged. You knew I'd run, didn't you? He yelled, his voice breaking with fury and fear. You're too predictable. Kalia shrugged, her tone so calm it made him want to punch something. He sank back into the chair, rubbing his forehead with both hands, his mind a tangled mess. Say I go with you, he rasped, his voice hoarse. Then what? What's your plan? Kalia's gaze softened a fraction, though it stayed resolute. I'll take you to Zoryn, my planet, she said. There I can protect you. Marcus snorted, his laugh dripping with sarcasm. Sounds like a hell of a vacation. Got any other options? Kalia's lips twitched, a flicker of her old mockery returning. Like staying here and punching the ones coming for you in the face? He nodded, a spark of hope in his eyes. Yeah, that. But she shook her head. Not viable, she said. They're stronger than you think. And there's more of them. Before he could argue, Kalia tapped the metal band on her wrist. The apartment walls dissolved like mist under sunlight, revealing a sleek black ship hovering just outside. It was silent, glossy, reflecting Aether Nexus's neon glow like a predator lurking in the dark. A hatch stood open, waiting. Go or stay, your choice, Kalia said, stepping toward it without looking back, her pointed ears twitching like a final invitation. Marcus stood there, staring at the ship, then back at the now empty apartment shell. A minute ago, he was just a drone fixing nobody, scraping by on boxed slop. Now, he faced the wildest crossroads of his life. Fine, he sighed, following her, his voice edged with defiance despite his hammering heart. But I'm gonna need more tea. A lot more. If I'm ditching Earth, I'm damn well staying awake to enjoy it. Marcus stepped into the ship, his grimy boots clacking softly against the smooth metal floor, a sound that felt out of place in the eerie stillness of the interior. The hatch slid shut behind him with a faint hiss, sealing his fate like a vault locking tight, and he stood there, gaping at the stark, mesmerizing simplicity of the space. This wasn't like anything he'd seen, no tangled wires or cluttered control panels like the drone shop back home. The walls glowed faintly, a warm golden light pulsing from unseen veins, syncing with Kalia's every step as if the ship were alive and attuned to her. The central console shimmered ahead, not a chaotic mess of buttons but a miniature starfield, holographic dots dancing under Kalia's deft fingers as she touched them. Marcus felt an odd warmth radiating from the floor, not physical heat, but a living presence, as if the ship had a soul of its own, quietly sizing up the outsider who'd just stumbled aboard. He staggered to the co-pilot's seat, collapsing into it with a soft thud, the cushioned surface cradling his exhausted frame. Through the wide front viewport, he watched the glittering spires of Aether Nexus, the towering hulks that had once been his entire world, shrink into faint specks against the thick, dark night. He rubbed his forehead with oil-stained fingers, trying to shake the surreal fog gripping his mind. You just wiped me off Earth's grid, didn't you? He asked, his voice rough, as if the question could anchor him to the life he'd left behind. Kalia didn't turn, her hands gliding over the console with the speed and grace of a musician, trails of light bending to her will. Yes, she replied, her tone sharp and flat, cutting through the air like a blade. "You're a ghost now. No record of you exists in any database." Marcus froze, his hand dropping to his lap with a faint slap. He stared at Kalia's back, searching for a sign she was joking, but her pointed ears only twitched faintly, her focus locked on the ship rather than his unraveling emotions. "Great," he muttered, sarcasm lacing his words though it couldn't mask his unease. "Always dreamed of being a phantom. No name, no home, nothing, just a guy floating through the cosmos." He let out a dry chuckle, but it faded fast in the ship's oppressive silence, leaving a hollow ache in his chest. The ship slipped away from its dock, engines thrumming a low, steady growl he felt through the seat. It shot into the void, leaving Aether Nexus behind like a fading memory. Marcus pressed his face to the viewport, stealing one last look at the city, the smog-choked streets, the crumbling towers of the slums, his dingy apartment now just an indistinguishable dot. It hit him like a punch, 29 years of scraping by fixing broken drones, choking down chemical slop, chasing half-formed dreams erased in minutes. He took a deep breath, forcing his voice steady despite the hammering in his chest. "So where are we headed?" he asked, turning to Kalia, hoping her answer would cut through the chaos in his head. "Zoryn," she said, her voice brief but firm, a declaration set in stone. "My planet. The safest place in this sector." Marcus nodded, though Zoryn was just a name to him, nothing more. "And if the Galactic Council tracks me down?" he pressed, his voice cracking as the hologram of his face flashed in his mind. Kalia's lips twitched into a razor-thin smirk, her purple eyes glinting with defiance. "They'll have to get through me first," she said, her tone low and proud, as if facing an army didn't faze her one bit. He barely had time to exhale, to let her words ease the knot in his gut, when a shrill beep erupted from the console. Red warning lights flared, the Starfield hologram jittering like it was caught in a storm. Kalia's jaw tightened, a faint grinding sound escaping her teeth, her pointed ears twitching as if picking up a signal. "Pursuit ships," she growled, her voice dropping with menace. "They're faster than I thought." Marcus tensed, his hands gripping the armrests until his knuckles bleached white. "How'd they find me?" he demanded, his pitch rising, nearly breaking with panic. Kalia's eyes darted over the streaming Zorynian glyphs on the console, a flood of alien code. "Probably a tracker embedded in you," she muttered, a hint of self-reproach in her tone. "I should have checked more thoroughly." Before he could respond, Kalia spun the controls, her fingers a blur of motion. The ship lurched violently, engines roaring like a beast jolted awake, pinning Marcus to his seat as it surged forward. Through the viewport, he saw an asteroid belt looming, a chaotic sprawl of jagged, black rocks spinning in the dark like giant blades waiting to shred their prey. "What the hell are you doing?" he yelled, his voice cracking as the ship plunged straight into the gaps between the stones. Kalia didn't answer, her eyes locked ahead, ears rigid with focus. Marcus clung to the armrests, heart pounding like it had burst, sweat beading on his brow as the ship weaved through tight spaces. A massive rocket surfaced, a craggy nightmare hurtled toward them, and Kalia banked hard at the last second, the engines screaming as the hull grazed within inches of disaster. Marcus squeezed his eyes shut, bracing for the crash, but only a distant boom sounded behind. The pursuing ship wasn't so lucky, smashing into a boulder and bursting into a brief flare of fire before vanishing into the void. He opened his eyes, gasping, sweat dripping down his cheeks despite the cool air. "You drive like a damn demon," he rasped, adrenaline still shaking his hands as he loosened his grip. Kalia smirked, that sharp-edged grin returning with a touch of smugness. "Thanks," she said, her tone casual as if she'd just done something mundane. Marcus sucked in a breath, steadying himself. "But what if they find me again?" he asked, his voice trembling at the thought of that unseen tracker inside him. Kalia turned to him, her purple eyes blazing with resolve. "We need to remove it," she said, firm as a vow. "I know someone who can help." After hours of light-speed travel, Kalia's ship slowed, its engines humming a deep note before falling silent. Marcus sat in the co-pilot's seat, eyes glued to the viewport as a space station drifted into view amid the emptiness. It wasn't the sleek, high-tech marvel he'd expected, just a hulking pile of scrap, a patchwork of rusted metal plates stitched together with what looked like cosmic duct tape, faintly glinting under distant starlight. Debris floated around it like a trash cloud, clinking together with soft tings in the void's silence. Marcus frowned, muttering, "This is your idea of help? Looks like a flying junkyard." Kalia didn't reply, her fingers brushing the console to dock the ship at a rickety platform, the hull trembling as it made contact. The hatch slid open, and Marcus stepped out, his boots hitting the scratched metal floor with a dry clomp. A sharp stench of burned metal hit him, mingling with the high-pitched whine of a welding torch somewhere in the chaos. He inhaled, adjusting to the stifling air, when a voice shrill and cutting sliced through the noise from above. "Kalia Vex, you've got the guts to show your face here again?" Marcus looked up, squinting as a figure dropped from the scaffolding overhead with predatory speed, landing before him with a light thud, kicking up a swirl of metallic dust. It was a woman, blonde hair a wild mess, matted with grease and sweat, her jagged fangs flashing in a wicked grin that made Marcus instinctively step back. She wore a tattered jumpsuit, patches torn to reveal scars and black oil stains on her tanned skin. Her hands glistened with grease, fingers rough and stuffed with tiny tools poking from her pockets. But her green eyes, blazing like searchlights, caught him most, sparking with a manic edge he couldn't mistake. "I'm Sasha," she said, her voice rough but brimming with energy, then clapped him on the shoulder so hard he nearly stumbled. "And you're the guy with a tracker shoved in him, right?" Marcus nodded, rubbing his aching shoulder, forcing a calm he didn't feel as his mind raced. "Guess so," he said, suspicion threading his tone. "What can you do about it? 'Cause if it's just knocking me around, I'm good." Sasha grinned wider, her laugh echoing through the station like clashing steel, showing off more jagged teeth. "Follow me," she said, spinning on her heel and striding off with quick steps, not bothering to check if he kept up. Marcus glanced at Kalia for an explanation, but she just shrugged, her pointed ears twitching like this was routine. They navigated narrow corridors, walls dented and sprouting cables like a dead machine's guts, flickering lights casting weak shadows. Sasha led him to a cramped room where a bizarre machine loomed at the center, a metal chair ringed with floating cords, bristling with glowing devices and tubes like veins. "Sit," she ordered, her voice buzzing with excitement, like a kid about to unwrap a gift. Marcus hesitated, eyeing the chair warily, but Kalia nudged his back, her voice cold. "Do it. We're out of time." He sighed, sinking into it, the icy metal biting through his thin jacket, and the moment Sasha flipped a switch, everything went black. When he blinked awake, he wasn't in the room anymore. He floated in a strange expanse, a web of brilliant light, blue and gold strands weaving together, pulsing like blood through a giant body. He felt weightless, his form dissolved, only his mind adrift among the glowing threads. "Is this my brain?" he gasped, his voice echoing in the void, sounding distant like a scream from afar. Sasha appeared before him, not flesh but a shimmering hologram, her green eyes blazing. "Yep," she cackled, her voice bouncing from all directions in a warped chorus. "Don't freak out, I'm just poking around in your head." She traced the light streams, fingers dancing through the air like she was playing an invisible tune, the strands bending to her touch. Marcus hovered there, a lost soul in his own mind, watching her work. Then she froze, her grin vanishing, eyes widening. A dark shape emerged in the web, cold, alive, slithering through the light like a venomous snake in a bloodstream. It wasn't static, it pulsed, stretched, as if hunting. "This isn't just a tracker," Sasha muttered, her voice dropping, serious for once. "It's active. Someone's watching." Marcus shuddered, a chill crawling under his skin though he had no body to feel it. "You mean there's a creep in my head?" he asked, his voice spiking with panic, ringing through the light web. Kalia's voice cut in over the comms, sharp and icy. "Marcus, push it out. This is your mind." He gritted his teeth, picturing himself grabbing the strands, channeling every ounce of willpower to shove the shadow back. Heat flared in his skull, searing like fire, and the darkness screamed not human, but a metallic shriek of tearing steel before dissolving completely. He jolted awake, sweat soaking his face, chest heaving like he'd sprinted a mile. Sasha stood over him, hands on hips, green eyes curious. "Is it gone?" he croaked, wiping his brow with a trembling hand. Sasha shrugged, scratching her greasy head. "Mostly," she said, her tone offhand. "Some leftover code's still there. To clean it out, we need Zoryn." Marcus groaned, clutching his throbbing head. "More trouble," he mumbled, exasperation thick in his voice. "I'm starting to hate space." But Sasha tilted her head, eyeing him with an odd gleam, like she'd stumbled on a juicy secret. "One thing I didn't mention," she said, her voice lowering, that wicked grin creeping back. Marcus blinked, his head spinning like another bomb had dropped. "Copy? What do you mean?" Sasha's grin widened, her eyes flashing with delight. "I mean, out there somewhere, there might be another you, a Marcus clone, built from the data in your head." Kalia spun towards Sasha, ears rigid, her voice cutting like ice. "Why didn't you say this sooner?" Sasha shrugged again, unfazed. "Just figured it out," she said, light as if discussing the weather. "And trust me, if the Galactic Council made it, it's not here to be your buddy." Marcus sat there, hands still cradling his head, feeling the universe crash down on his shoulders. The journey to Zoryn pressed on, but the ship's interior no longer felt like the safe haven it had been at the start. The air grew heavy, each breath laced with an invisible weight bearing down on Marcus's shoulders. The faint glow from the walls, once synced with Kalia's steps, now seemed dimmer, overshadowed by a creeping unease seeping through every crack. Marcus slumped in the co-pilot's seat, chin propped on his hand, staring out at the black void where distant stars twinkled like cryptic whispers. He couldn't shake Sasha's insane bombshell, a duplicate of himself, wearing his face, his memories, maybe roaming the vast cosmos. The thought clung to him like a leech, draining the calm he'd fought to hold on to after their last escape. "If there's a copy of me," he said, his voice rough from hours of brooding, "what's it gonna do?" The question hung in the stillness, punctuated only by the faint tick-tick of the console. Kalia, standing at the Starfield hologram, frowned, her pointed ears twitching as if catching a sound beyond his reach. Her hand tightened on the console's edge, silver fingers curling into a small fist, like she was holding back a tide of anger. "If the Galactic Council created it," she replied, her voice sinking with cold certainty, "it could be a weapon. A version programmed to serve them, no hesitation, no feelings, a perfect tool in their hands." Marcus forced a brittle laugh, short and sharp, trying to fend off the chill spreading from his chest to his limbs. "Perfect," he said, sarcasm thick but his eyes heavy with dread. "So I'm not just hunted, I'm up against myself. A Marcus 2.0, probably smarter, stronger, and doesn't need to choke down chemical slop to get by." He rubbed his forehead, trembling fingers brushing sweat-slick skin, grasping for an anchor amid the storm in his head. Sasha, sprawled in the corner with her feet propped on a metal crate, snorted, her laugh clanging like steel. "Picture it in a better outfit," she tossed in, her green eyes glinting with glee at his misery. But that brief jab of humor evaporated when a piercing beep split the silence. Red warning lights flashed, the starfield jittering like it was caught in a gale. Kalia's teeth ground audibly, a sharp sound in the tight space, her ears snapping upright like antennas. "Again?" she snarled, her voice low with frustration, hands flying over the console to decode the alert. Marcus braced himself, gripping the armrests, expecting another chase. But it wasn't ships this time. A strange signal blinked on screen, a jumble of encrypted glyphs twisting like a code he couldn't crack. Sasha leapt from her seat, darting to an auxiliary panel, her greasy fingers hammering the hologram keys with startling speed. "I've got this," she said, her voice edged with thrill, like cracking codes was her favorite game. The screen flared, and when the message resolved, all three froze. Cold, crisp text hovered midair, a death sentence dangling before them. "Marcus Kane, I know where you are. Surrender, or we'll send your copy to Earth and it will destroy everything you've ever cared about." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face, his skin icing over like he'd been dunked in frost. He stared at the words, each one a knife twisting in his gut. "They're threatening Earth?" he whispered, his voice breaking with shock and fear, hands shaking as he clung to the chair to steady himself. "Because of me?" The idea that his chaotic, familiar world Aether Nexus, the slums, the people he'd brushed past could be obliterated just for his existence choked him. Kalia turned to him, her purple eyes blazing like fire, their light bouncing off her silver face. "They want you to give up," she said, her voice low but resolute, every word a warning. "But if you do, they won't stop. They'll use you to control all of humanity, not just Earth, but every last scrap of us left in the galaxy." Sasha nodded, her fingers still tapping fast, green eyes flashing as she analyzed the signal. "I can block this," she said, urgency creeping into her tone. "But they've got our location. We've got ours, maybe less." Marcus's pulse thundered in his ears, drowning out the console's faint ticks. The thought of a soulless doppelgänger with his face stomping through Earth, torching everything he'd known, snapped something inside him. He surged to his feet, the chair screeching back, hands clenching the armrests until they ached. "No," he said, his voice quivering but hardening, a vow rising from deep in his chest. "I'm not letting them blackmail me. If that copy's out there, I'll find it. And I'll kill it." He locked eyes with Kalia, a fire igniting in his gaze, not panic or fear, but a fierce, almost feral resolve. Kalia met his stare, her ears twitching faintly, and for the first time since they'd met, he saw a flicker of respect in her deep purple eyes. "You sure?" she asked, her tone low, not doubting but confirming. "Damn sure," he growled, fists tightening until his nails bit into his palms, the sting grounding him. "I'm not letting any bastard copy or alien threaten what's ours. Not Earth, not anyone, and sure as hell not me." Sasha stopped typing, turning to him with a jagged grin, her fangs glinting in the dim light. "Nice one, drone boy," she said, her voice laced with delight. "Now it's getting good." The ship trembled faintly, as if it felt the shift in him. Marcus stood tall, his breathing steadying, eyes fixed on the now dark screen after Sasha jammed the signal. He wasn't the nobody drone tech anymore, not the guy scraping by on boxed sludge and broken dreams. Now, he was a man with a fight, and no matter how vast the universe stretched, he'd be damned if it swallowed him without a hell of a struggle. Kalia's ship tore through space, its engines humming a deep, steady growl as it decelerated and touched down on Zoryn. Marcus rose from the co-pilot's seat, his breath slowing as he stepped out, his dirty boots crunching onto a landing pad nestled deep within the crater of a dormant volcano. A cool breeze brushed his face, carrying a strange scent, not the burnt metal or industrial smog of Aether Nexus, but something fresh, like rain mixed with the faint sweetness of alien flora. He looked up, and for the first time, he truly saw Zoryn. The planet was hauntingly beautiful, almost unreal. The sky shimmered with a gentle purple hue, rippling like liquid silk stirred by cosmic winds, crowned by 3 moons, one large, 2 small, casting a silvery glow over the sprawling forests below. The trees didn't glow green like Earth's but pulsed with neon light, streaks of teal and pale violet dancing across their leaves, as if the whole forest breathed alive in the dark. Marcus stood there, hands in his jacket pockets, eyes wide at the sight, but a voice in his head whispered, "No time for sightseeing." Kalia led him and Sasha through a hidden passage behind glossy black basalt rocks, descending into a secret research space carved into the mountain's heart. The narrow corridors gleamed with smooth alloy walls, reflecting light from tiny ceiling strips, guiding them to a high-tech lab. The chamber sprawled wide, brimming with towering machines, rings of floating cables and flickering Zorynian script holograms buzzing with activity. A team of Zorynian engineers, tall, slender beings with silver skin and pointed ears like Kalia's, moved with eerie precision among the equipment, their deep purple eyes flicking toward Marcus with cold curiosity. They gestured him to a central machine, a bizarre hybrid of a dentist's chair and a cockpit, bristling with glowing tubes and hovering metal bands. Marcus hesitated, eyeing the contraption warily. Its overhead rings and pulsing conduits looked ready to swallow him whole. "This thing safe?" he muttered, doubt thick in his voice, but Kalia nudged his back, her tone icy. Sit. We need to scrub the leftover code from your head before the Galactic Council gets here. He sank into the chair, the frigid metal biting through his jacket, sending a shiver up his spine. The engineers fastened bands around his head and wrists, tiny connectors clicking into place with sharp ticks. A pale blue light swept over him, head to toe, pulsing like a heartbeat, digging into his skull with an invasive hum. He clenched his jaw, hands gripping the armrests, sweat beading on his brow despite the cool air. After what felt like an eternity of tension, though only minutes passed, the technician spoke, his voice low and even. It's done. No trace of the device remains. Marcus exhaled, shoulders slumping as relief washed over him like a cool breeze. But that moment shattered when Sasha, stationed at a monitoring screen in the corner, yelled, We've got a big damn problem. Marcus whipped his head around, heart pounding as Sasha jabbed at the display. The hologram zoomed in, revealing a fleet of Galactic Council ships entering Zoryn's orbit, sleek, black vessels with crimson veins of light snaking across their hulls like a metal monster's blood vessels. But what froze his blood wasn't the fleet, it was the figure on the lead ship's bridge. Sasha magnified the image again, and Marcus saw it clear as day, himself, or rather, a twisted mirror of him. The copy wore glossy black armor, hugging its frame like a second skin, reflecting the bridge's glow like a deathly mirror. Its eyes were cold, emotionless voids, not his warm brown, but a sterile silver white, like a machine's. What chilled him most was its smile, crooked, sinister, utterly alien to him, forged from darkness instead of flesh. Kalia's teeth ground audibly, a sharp sound cutting through the lab's stillness, her pointed ears snapping upright. It's here faster than I expected, she growled, her fist clenching tight. Marcus's hands balled into fists, adrenaline surging hot through his veins despite the cold air. What's it want? He asked, his voice trembling but hardening. Sasha tapped the screen, and a voice blared through the speakers, his voice, but frigid and cruel, honed sharp by ice. I am Marcus Prime. I've come to replace the imposter. Surrender or Zoryn will burn to ash. The words echoed through the room, each one a hammer blow to his skull. Marcus turned to Kalia, eyes blazing, pupils shrinking with rage and defiance. It's calling me the imposter? He roared, his voice cracking with fury boiling in his chest. I'll show that thing who's real, I'll rip that smug grin off its face. He shot to his feet, the chair screeching back, hands shaking with adrenaline but his gaze unwavering. But before they could strategize, a Zorynian engineer burst in, his silver face pale, purple eyes wide with panic. We just found out, he stammered, voice quaking. The copy isn't just a clone. It's enhanced with biotech, stronger, faster, and it can control minds. Sasha swore loudly, the curse exploding in the quiet like a gunshot. Fantastic, she muttered, scratching her greasy head, green eyes flashing with rare irritation. What now? Fight a psychic super freak? Marcus stood there, chest heaving, but his lips curled into a defiant smirk, not from confidence, but from a stubborn fire roaring inside him. Now I face it, he said, his voice thick with resolve, each word a vow etched into the air. And I'll prove it. Humans don't bow, not to aliens, not to clones, and damn sure not to some bastard calling me a fake. He locked eyes with Kalia, then Sasha, his gaze burning like an unquenchable flame. Kalia nodded faintly, her ears twitching, while Sasha grinned jaggedly, her wicked smile returning. All right, buddy, Sasha said, glee in her tone. Let's give it a hell of a show. The lab trembled faintly, as if Zoryn itself sensed the clash ahead. Marcus straightened, fists clenched, ready to step into a fight not just for himself, but for everything he stood for, the unbreakable will of humanity. Kalia guided Marcus and Sasha through the base's tight corridors, her steps ringing steady on the alloy floor, her pointed ears twitching at every faint sound. They stopped before a heavy metal door, its surface scarred and traced with dim red veins of light. Kalia tapped a control panel, and the door slid open with a dry hiss, revealing an armory within. The vast space bristled with weaponry racks of plasma guns glowing blue, energy swords hissing faintly as air brushed their blades. Light from above glinted off a combat suit at the center, silver gray, form-fitting, with faint teal veins pulsing like a machine's lifeblood. Kalia stepped forward, lifting the suit and handing it to Marcus. "Put it on," she said, her voice low but firm. "It might control minds, but you've got something it doesn't, free will." Marcus took it, feeling its weight, the cold metal chilling his skin. He suited up, each piece snapping into place with sharp clicks, hugging him like a second skin, light yet unyielding. Sasha tossed him a sleek plasma pistol, black and glossy, its barrel flaring blue with every touch, humming a low warning. He gripped it tight, fingers tracing the trigger, and nodded at Kalia. "Free will," he echoed, voice rough but resolute. "And a damn good dose of pissed-off human grit. It'll learn who I am." They left the base, racing across Zoryn's rugged terrain to a nearby canyon, an ideal battleground. The gorge stretched deep and narrow, flanked by jagged black basalt cliffs rising like giant blades into the purple sky. Shadows loomed thick, broken only by the silver glow of the three moons, painting faint streaks across the rocky ground. Wind howled through, dry and sharp, carrying the scorched earth scent of the planet. Marcus crouched behind a massive boulder, pistol steady, breath evening out as he watched the Galactic Council fleet land in the distance, black ships touching down with heavy thuds, dust swirling around their makeshift pads. From the lead vessel, Marcus Prime emerged, flanked by elite soldiers in crimson armor, weapons glinting. It stood taller than him, its face a perfect match but colder, its silver-white eyes lifeless, a twisted grin curling its lips like a mockery of humanity. Marcus Prime halted mid-canyon, its heavy boots crunching stone with a sharp crack. "You're the mistake," it said, its voice booming through the gorge, cold and deep, amplified by the tech within. "I'm the perfected you." Marcus stepped from cover, pistol leveled at it, blue light from the barrel glinting off his face. "Perfected?" he snarled, sarcasm lacing his fury. "You're just a puppet for those alien bastards. I'm the real deal, and I'll prove it by wiping you out of this universe." The fight erupted in an instant. Marcus fired, a blazing blue plasma bolt streaking toward Marcus Prime, but it dodged with inhuman speed, a blur in the air. It charged, boots pounding the ground, rocks splintering under each step. Marcus backpedaled, firing nonstop, but Prime evaded effortlessly, as if reading every shot. As it closed in, Marcus felt a strange pressure in his head, not pain, but an invisible hand squeezing his mind, clawing inside. "Surrender!" Prime's voice hissed in his skull, sharp and frigid, like a needle piercing his brain. "You can't win!" Marcus gritted his teeth, sweat streaming down his face, eyes narrowing with pain and rage. He fought back with raw willpower, picturing himself shoving the intrusion out. "You don't get humans!" he roared, voice breaking with effort, then lunged, slamming his fist into Prime's face with every ounce of strength. The crack rang out, loud and brutal, staggering the copy back, a red spark flashing where his knuckles hit its armor. The duel raged on, fierce and unrelenting, a storm tearing through the canyon. Prime was stronger, each blow landed like a sledgehammer, denting Marcus's suit, forcing gasps from his lungs. But Marcus was smarter, using the rough terrain, rolling behind rocks, leaping onto ledges, firing surprise shots from blind angles. Finally, after a relentless barrage, he vaulted onto a high boulder, aimed at Prime's chest, and pulled the trigger. A searing plasma bolt struck true, piercing its armor, dropping it to its knees with a heavy thud. But as it fell, a blinding white light erupted from its body, forcing Marcus to shield his eyes. A new voice boomed through the canyon, not Prime's, but deeper, colder, as if the universe itself spoke. "You think this is over? We have hundreds more copies. You've only delayed us." Marcus stood panting, chest heaving, blood dripping from a gash on his forehead onto his chin. He watched Prime's body crumble to ash, its shattered armor dissolving into glittering dust under the moonlight. Kalia and Sasha raced from their cover, eyes wide with shock. "Hundreds more?" Sasha muttered, scratching her greasy head, her voice tinged with rare unease. "Did we just win or lose here?" Kalia stepped up, grabbing Marcus's hand, her silver grip firm yet oddly gentle. No matter how many, she said, her tone low and steady. We'll take them all down. You proved that today. Marcus wiped the blood with the back of his hand, smearing red across his pale skin, a defiant grin tugging his lips. If they want a war, he rasped, voice raw but blazing, they'll get one. Humanity doesn't kneel and neither do I. He turned, striding back to the ship with Kalia and Sasha in tow, their shadows stretching over the rocky ground under the moon's glow. Boarding, he sank into the co-pilot's seat, gazing out at the vast cosmos through the viewport. He wasn't the drone-fixing nobody anymore, not the guy living off box slop and shattered dreams. He was a symbol now of defiance, of human will, of fire no darkness could snuff out. And no matter how many foes lay ahead, hundreds of clones or an alien empire, he knew humanity would stand tall, and he'd lead the charge. The ship rocketed into deep space, its engines roaring a low, powerful hum, like the heartbeat of a titan ready to face the galaxy. Inside, Marcus sat in the co-pilot's seat, his combat suit still clinging to him, its scratches and dried blood a testament to the battle on Zoryn. Across from him, Kalia's silver hands danced over the controls with deadly precision, her pointed ears twitching as she adjusted their course. Sasha lounged in the corner, feet propped on a metal crate, fiddling with a greasy tool, her green eyes sparking with mischief whenever they flicked to Marcus. They were a tiny army, 3 outcasts against a sprawling alien empire, but the air inside wasn't heavy like before. Instead, a quiet resolve simmered, a fire glowing in every glance, every move. Earth was now just a distant memory in Marcus's mind, a faint speck lost in the cosmic sprawl, with Aether Nexus's dusty streets, his crumbling apartment, and days of aimless survival. But he harbored no regrets. Staring out the viewport, where stars stretched endless like a glittering tapestry, he felt a new strength surging in his chest. He'd found his purpose, to shield humanity, whether it meant facing hundreds of clones wearing his face or the Galactic Council's unimaginable might. He wasn't the nobody drone tech anymore, he was a warrior, a symbol, and he'd be damned if anyone extinguished that flame. Where to next? He asked, voice rough but solid, cradling the dark green tea Kalia had handed him. Its warmth seeped through his calloused fingers, the sweet scent easing the ache from the fight. Kalia turned, her purple eyes flashing bright, lips curling into a sharp, fierce grin. Hunting clones, she said, her tone low and proud, a promise carved into the void. Then the Galactic Council. They'll learn they picked the wrong guy to mess with. Sasha laughed loud, the sound bouncing through the cabin like clashing metal, her jagged fangs glinting in the dim light. Welcome to the team, buddy, she said, slamming a hand on the crate with a sharp clang. You're officially the galaxy's #1 enemy, not bad for a drone-fixing grunt. Marcus sipped the tea, its bitter edge tingling his tongue, and grinned, not the forced, mocking smirk of old, but a real one, brimming with challenge. Good, he said, defiance lacing his words, burning with will. I hate being a nobody. If the universe wants to remember me, let it know me as the alien's worst nightmare. The ship quivered as it sliced through a cosmic dust cloud, starlight flickering through the viewport, bathing Marcus's face harder now, sharper, yet still carrying the grit of an ordinary man who'd shattered his limits. He set the tea down, fingers brushing the plasma pistol at his side, its weight a reminder of what lay ahead. This wasn't the end, he knew that damn well. It was just the start of the greatest fight humanity would ever face, a war not just for Earth, but for their very existence in this sprawling universe. And Marcus would lead it, not because he was the strongest or smartest, but because he was the one who'd never back down. Out there, the stars shone silent, and he grinned again, ready for whatever came next.